In a village nestled near a vast and ancient forest, there lived a young girl named Kendengeru. Life had not been kind to her from the very beginning. Her mother passed away just a few months after Kendengeru's birth, leaving her father to raise her alone. Despite his best efforts, the burden of both fatherhood and grief weighed heavily on him. When Kendengeru was still a young child, her father remarried, hoping to provide a motherly figure for his daughter and perhaps lighten the heavy load he carried. However, the new woman who entered their lives was far from the loving mother Kendengeru needed. She brought in her own daughter into the household. From the moment they all began living together, it became clear that Kendengeru's stepmother favored her own daughter, showing her kindness and affection whilst treating Kendengeru with coldness and cruelty. As the years passed, the stepmother's mistreatment grew harsher. She would often beat Kendengeru for the smallest of reasons, and Kendengeru was forced to do all the house chores whilst her stepsister was allowed to rest and play. Kendengeru's life was one of constant toil and sadness, but despite these challenges, she grew into a beautiful and kind-hearted young woman. Her beauty did not go unnoticed, and soon many suitors from the village began to seek her hand in marriage. Some were wealthy, others were handsome, and they came from all walks of life. However, the attention Kendengeru received only fueled her stepmother's jealousy. Determined to ensure her own daughter married well, the stepmother devised a wicked plan. She arranged for her daughter to wed the richest man in the village, a match that would secure her daughter's future and elevate their status. As for Kendengeru, the stepmother sought to rid herself of her by forcing her into marriage with an old man. Though Kendengeru was reluctant, she had little choice but to comply, hoping that marriage would at least free her from her stepmother's tyranny. Kendengeru married the old man and did her best to fulfill her duties as a wife. She treated him with respect and care, cooking his meals and tending to his needs. Despite the age difference, they lived a peaceful life together, and after a year, they were blessed with a bouncing baby boy. For a brief moment, Kendengeru and her husband were filled with joy, but their happiness was short-lived. The old man fell ill. Despite Kendengeru's best efforts to care for him, he passed away a few months later. Heartbroken and grieving, Kendengeru was left alone with her baby boy. With nowhere else to turn to, Kendengeru decided to return to her father's house. She hoped that despite everything, her father would welcome her and her child. But when she arrived, she was met by her stepmother instead. The woman had not changed. She was still as cruel and heartless as ever. Upon seeing Kendengeru, the stepmother beat her and insulted her, telling her to leave and never come back. She did not want Kendengeru's father to know of his grandchild, especially since her own daughter had not yet borne a child after a year of marriage. Desperate and with no other option, Kendengeru left her father's house with nothing but her baby boy. She abandoned all her belongings and set off with a heavy heart, unsure of where she would go or what the future held for her and her child. As Kendengeru walked through the dense forest, carrying her baby in her arms, she came across an elderly woman, struggling to carry a heavy log on her head. Despite her own troubles, Kendengeru's kind nature compelled her to offer help. Nana, she said softly, do you need my help? Let me carry your log for you. Old woman, surprised and grateful for the young girl's kindness, handed over the log. She then revealed how thirsty and tired she was from the long journey. Moved by the woman's plight, Kendengeru led her to a nearby river. She set the log down and asked the old woman to wait whilst she fetched water. With her baby by her side, Kendengeru brought back refreshing water and they both drank until they were satisfied. As they rested by the river, the old woman asked Kendengeru about her journey. Kendengeru, feeling a sense of trust, shared her life story with the old woman. From the loss of her mother and her father's remarriage to the cruelty of her stepmother and her recent widowhood. The old woman listened with a sympathetic heart. She could see the goodness in Kendengeru and felt a deep compassion for her. You are a strong and a kind soul, the old woman said gently. Come, I will take you to my home. You and your baby can stay with me for a while. Grateful for the offer of shelter, Kendengeru accepted and followed the old woman deeper into the forest. They arrived at a small but cozy house hidden among the trees. Upon entering, Kendengeru was warmly welcomed and shown to a comfortable room where she could rest with her baby. Before settling in, the old woman asked about Kendengeru's belongings and her baby's needs. Kendengeru explained that she had left everything behind when her stepmother cruelly turned her away. Touched by Kendengeru's plight, the old woman began to sing a gentle, soothing song. Kendengeru sisinam legabaruru buna boso gezinga. Kendengeru sisinam legabaruru buna boso gezinga. The melody was filled with wisdom and kindness, and as she sang, the atmosphere in the room became more peaceful and calm. Kendengeru felt a sense of peace she didn't know in a long time, and for the first time in months, she was able to rest without fear or sorrow. The days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and Kendengeru and her baby boy lived happily with the old woman. Kendengeru took great care of the old woman in return for her kindness, cooking meals and keeping the house tidy. The old woman in return provided for all their needs, ensuring that Kendengeru and her baby were comfortable and well fed. As time passed, Kendengeru blossomed into an even more beautiful and kind-hearted young woman, while her baby grew into a healthy and chubby toddler. Despite the peace she had found, Kendengeru's heart still longed to see her father. One day, she expressed her wish to visit him, and the old woman, understanding the love she had for her father, agreed to let her go. The old woman knew that Kendengeru's journey was not yet complete and that she needed to face her past before she could move forward. On the day of Kendengeru's departure, the old woman presented her with two bags, one large, one small. Kendengeru looked at both bags carefully before choosing the smaller one. The old woman smiled knowingly and asked her why she had chosen the smaller bag. Kendengeru replied with humility, saying that the small bag was sufficient for her and that she was deeply grateful for all that the old woman had done for her and her baby. The old woman nodded and bid Kendengeru farewell, reminding her not to open the bag until the next day. Though sad to leave the old woman's loving care, Kendengeru was determined to reunite with her father. She thanked the old woman profusely for her kindness, care, and the mysterious gift. With a heavy heart, Kendengeru set off through the forest once more. She walked for hours until she finally arrived at her father's house late at night. To her relief, her father was home, and so were her stepmother. Her stepsister was also there, who she suspects was visiting. Overjoyed to see her father, Kendengeru embraced him warmly. He in turn welcomed her and his grandson with open arms, providing them with a comfortable place to rest as Kendengeru and her baby were both tired from the long journey. After a peaceful night's sleep, Kendengeru woke up feeling rested and ready to spend the day with her father. He felt happy to be back home and to finally introduce her father to his grandson. That morning, they sat together, sharing stories and catching up on all the lost time. Kendengeru's father was overjoyed to meet his grandson, and he couldn't stop smiling as he held the little boy in his arms. Kendengeru told her father everything that had happened to her since she left home, the hardship she faced, the kindness of the old woman, and how she found safety in the forest. Her father listened with great attention, feeling both sad and proud for his daughter's strength. As they talked, Kendengeru remembered the small bag that the old woman had given her before she left. She mentioned it to her father, sparking his curiosity. They both recalled the old woman's instruction to wait until the next day to open it. Now that the day has come, they decided it was time to reveal the mystery hidden inside the bag. While Kendengeru and her father sat in excitement, Kendengeru's stepmother and stepsister, who had been living in their house, were secretly spying on them. They hid behind the door, their jealousy and curiosity overwhelming them. They desperately wanted to know what was in the bag, and their minds racing with different thoughts. When Kendengeru and her father finally opened the small bag, they were astonished by what they saw. Inside was a treasure trove of gold, diamond, and precious jewels that skimmed and sparkled in the sunlight. Kendengeru and her father gasped in disbelief, their eyes wide with wonder and joy. This was a treasure beyond anything they could ever dream of. Their hearts filled with happiness as they realized their lives had just changed forever. But the joy in the room wasn't shared by everyone. The stepmother and stepsister, unable to hide any longer, burst into the room. Their eyes were filled with greed as they stared angrily at the treasure. The atmosphere shifted. While Kendengeru and her father were filled with pure joy, the stepmother and stepsister's hearts darkened with jealousy. Kendengeru and her father began to make plans for their new future. With this treasure, they would live a life filled with comfort and happiness. They spoke of the many things they would do, imagining all the possibilities. But in the other room, Kendengeru's stepmother and stepsister seethed with envy and jealousy. Their bitterness only grew stronger as they realized how lucky Kendengeru had become. Kendengeru's stepsister's return to the house was not just a mere visit. She had been expelled from her husband's house after being disrespectful to him and his family. To make matters worse, she hadn't been able to have children in 3 years of marriage, adding to her shame and her mother's disappointment. With no place to go, she had returned to her mother's house, where she watched with envy as Kendengeru's life flourished. Determined to claim wealth for herself, the stepsister decided to follow Kendengeru's path. She believed that if Kendengeru could find treasure by helping an old woman, then she could do the same. Her mother, equally consumed by jealousy, encouraged her plan. Together, they conspired to track down the old woman in the forest and demand a similar blessing. The next morning, the stepsister stepped out of the house on her journey, her heart filled with greed and determination. Her mother gave her final instruction before she left, urging her to return with even more treasure than Kendengeru had received. The stepsister walked for hours through the forest, growing more impatient with each step. Finally, she saw an old woman carrying a heavy log on her head. At first, the stepsister ignored her, too proud to offer any help. But then she thought back to Kendengeru's story and realized this might be the same old woman Kendengeru had met. Forcing a smile, she stepped back and the stepsister offered to help, hoping to gain favor. As they walked together, the stepsister asked if the old woman knew Kendengeru. The old woman nodded, her face kind but wise, and spoke of how Kendengeru had shown her great kindness and shared her life story. But the stepsister's impatience soon began to show. She was not interested in sharing stories or being kind. She only wanted treasure. Growing tired of waiting, the stepsister bluntly demanded her reward. The old woman, seeing through the stepsister's greed, smiled and presented her with 2 bags, one large, one small. Without thinking twice, the stepsister snatched the large bag, convinced that it would contain more wealth. The old woman, her eyes twinkling with a knowing look, simply smiled and handed over the bag. Before the stepsister left, the old woman warned her not to open the bag until the next day, but the stepsister barely listened. Too eager to claim her reward, she rushed home, her mind filled with visions of gold and jewels. As soon as she arrived, she locked herself in her mother's room, eager to share the moment with her. Ignoring the old woman's warning, the stepsister and her mother hurried to open the bag. They imagined it flowing with treasures far more valuable than what Kendengeru had received. But as they tore open the bag, their smiles vanished, replaced with horror. Out of the bag poured snakes, scorpions, lions, and other deadly creatures. They attacked them without mercy, consuming the stepmother and the stepsister in an instant. The room was left in chaos. The bag and the 2 women had vanished without a trace. Their greed and jealousy had led to their own destruction. Kendengeru and her father searched for them for days, but it was as if they had disappeared into thin air. Kendengeru's father recalled how his wife had often threatened to leave him. At this time, it seemed she had made good on her promise. Life for Kendengeru and her father became peaceful once again, without the toxic presence of the stepmother and stepsister. Their days were filled with joy. Kendengeru's baby boy grew into a strong, healthy child, and Kendengeru herself became a symbol of kindness and beauty in the village. As the years passed, their story became a legend. People spoke of how Kendengeru's good heart and humble spirit had led her to great blessings, whilst her stepmother and stepsister's greed and cruelty had brought about their downfall. The village learned an important lesson that good deed leads to good fortune, whilst evil deeds bring ruin. Kendengeru and her father lived a life full of prosperity and happiness, never seeing the stepmother and stepsister again, but they continued to thrive, grateful for the kindness and blessing they had received. This story teaches us that we should always act with kindness, humility, and respect. In the end, our actions come back to us, whether good or bad. And for Kendengeru, goodness led to a life of peace, love, and happiness. Thanks for watching. Kendengeru Sisina, like a barrel of a kissing